your burden. We live in the same bed, but there's no curtains to hide the hurting. But that's my version of a day in the life of sugar and spice, the lows and the highs, the live and deny, frozen.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Soul Healing, the podcast, sponsored by Journey Healing Institute. I am your host, Dr. Kimberly J, spiritual scholar, educator, and holistic healing practitioner. And so this is a sacred space where Black folk come to reclaim our power to heal, thrive, experience sacred joy, and make meaning of our lives. Here, we explore ancestral wisdom, embodied spiritual practices, and the transformative magic that happens when we commit to the real, honest, and sometimes difficult work of intergenerational soul to soul healing. And so this week, my guest and I will explore how to acknowledge and mitigate the stress, grief, anxiety, and sometimes angst that is experienced by parents, students of all ages, and educators at the beginning of a new school year. And so let's keep it real. Navigating the educational system for Black folk is daunting. It can be intimidating, biased, and oftentimes education is used as a tool of subjugation. Yet, it can be liberating, expansive, affirming, and deeply healing. And so the classroom environment, when we talk about the educational system, we cannot void it from the classroom environment, which is tied to how teachers are able to share knowledge and how students are able to explore and be able to integrate that knowledge. And for parents who have children in school, how they can begin to nurture like this sense of safety and security and trust in the hands of the educators of the school. And so being able to co-create this learning environment for their students is paramount. And too often, these learning environments that are rooted in Euro-patriarchal, I call it Euro-patriarchy, because these education systems were built and designed for and by them. But these systems, they tend to stress uniformity, rigidity, rote memorization, and what Paulo Freire calls the banking system of education. And so these systems tend to be extremely toxic spaces. And so quite often we are looking to enter into spaces that we think are safe, that are brave, that are open for us to learn, but sometimes and quite often these spaces can cause harm. And so that could be a reason why a lot of people experience a lot of angst in going back into these spaces, especially after being away from them for a few months, having the summer season of freedom and movement, and not having to be in these environments. And so sometimes coming back, the transition back into these environments can feel daunting. It can feel depressing, especially if you are entering into a new space for the first time. And the thing about these education systems and starting off a new school year, it is new every single time. And so you have a new teacher, new subjects, the newness. And so it's natural that as we are completing cycles and beginning new cycles, that there is some angst there. And so, as an educator myself, one of the things that I do in my practice is I look at the classroom as being ceremony, a space of community, a space of belonging, a space where you are not just your mind, you're not just coming there to learn. And so having compassion for the angst and the anxiety that students experience. And I teach adult learners, adult students, and they still have all of those same angst and anxiety and uncertainty as they are entering into this new space. And so taking the time to really ritualize education. And what I mean by that is inviting these students into the space by grounding, by welcoming, by talking about some of the anxieties and the fears. My youngest son just shared a story with me, and I was hoping that he would join us. He has a group meeting, so maybe he'll join later. But he shared this story. He just started the graduate program at FAMU, Florida AMU, and he just last week, the chair of his department, of the psychology department, invited all of the new students in the graduate cohort to her home, and she fed them and they played music and just really this welcoming. And as African diasporic people, the one thing that is paramount for us is that sense of belonging and that sense of community. And we do that by building relationships. And so I know that that seems like a tall task in a classroom environment, but that is what begins to allow not only the students, but also the teacher to be more at ease. The program to be more at ease, because you are welcoming these students into this new cycle, into this new community. And so with that said, I want to introduce or have my guests introduce themselves. And this is, I'm so honored to have this panel, because here I have educators, I have mommies, parents of students, and I have a couple of students, current students that are in the space. And again, this applies to all students of all ages, because again, it's about the beginning of a new cycle, and about some of the educational harm that Black folk in particular tend to face in these environments. Even if it's a all Black environment, the system itself creates can create an environment of toxicity. And so with that said, I will I'm looking at Dominique. I'll just go to my right and just share a little bit about your role and your part in this discussion. If you're a mommy of students, if you are also an educator or within the educator system, and just share a little bit about that. And then we'll dive down into your own experiences and what tools and techniques you've implemented in your own journey to navigating this. Dominique?
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Dominique. Thank you, Kim, for having me. I am a mom. I'm a student. I'm an educator. I'm a site director for early childhood education program. I've been in early childhood for over 10 or 15 years, doing everything you probably could think of. I've been in the classroom. I've been admin. I'm also a student. That's pretty much a quick thing about me.
All right.
A lot of
Thanks.
things. Yeah.
All right, Dominique. Thank you. So next, Brittany.
Hi, everybody. I am Brittany Avery Jones. I am currently going to be a student. I just submitted, I guess, my application for my principal preparation program. I am a mom. I am a school counselor. I also have my master's for mental clinical health. So I have been experienced in a wide range of fields, but specifically been in the education field roughly for about 10 years.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you, Brittany. Keisha.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Keisha White, and I am also a former elementary educator. I taught the benchmark grades, which bring on a lot of stress for, the students as well as the parents. And it was actually my work with the parents that led me to my current path of being in adult education. I'm a senior admissions counselor, so I actually work with adults, helping them to choose the best programs for them, the best time, because timing is also very important in planning for success. And my work in education has been close to about 15 years.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, let me hear from you, Jerome.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Jerome Morris. I am what I refer to as a career teacher. I've done a few things in education, but most of my 32, I think I'm beginning my 33rd year. I've been a classroom teacher of primary age students, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. I'm very much in tune with the cycle that we talk about when it comes to education. My real background comes from the Association of Black Psychologists and ASCAC, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. And so I try to bring the teachings from those two organizations into what I do into the classroom. That's my introduction of myself.
Awesome. Thank you. Kira, let me hear from you.
All right. Hello. My name is Kira Bedford. Introducing myself, I wear many hats, so I am a mom starting off. I'm a mom of two little ones. I also have a mom of a neurodivergent child. I also am an educator. I've worked in the classroom for over 5 years. I'm a former high school principal. And now I also work as a professor at a local college, at Just University. And on top of that, I just launched my own micro school, Neurocatalyst Academy. We are a micro school for Black and Brown neurodivergent students. We are culturally affirming space. So it's my role in the education field.
Awesome. Thank you. Christian, let me hear from you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christian Davis. I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Louisville, and I'm currently studying for my graduate degree in film and television directing. I just started classes last week, so the beginning of school is definitely something top of mind for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Christian. And I think last, but certainly not least, Medea. Good morning. Did I lose Medea? Yeah, I think she's having technical difficulties. All right. So thank you. Did I leave anybody out? I don't think I did. Great. And so let's start with the first question that I would like to unpack with you all. What are some of your personal experiences with dealing with back to school stressors? And when I say back to school stressors, this could be, from the beginning of the school year from preschool year to the beginning of the school year. Sometimes it can go all the way until the end of September, October, before your nervous system, your body, your spirit kind of gets into a rhythm or a flow. But I would like to hear from you, based upon your role either as parent, educator, student. What are some of the angst and the stressors and sometimes depression, just naming the things that you tend to experience at the beginning of a new school year? And I'll just let anybody jump in unless nobody wants to, then I'll call on people.
So I think for me, the first thing that I think about, I feel like the early years of like my kids were a little bit easier to manage versus like now that I'm thinking the later years. And I don't really know if that's because a lot of times as mom, we kind of run just on a drive where we're just going and not really necessarily thinking about it. But I feel like that time frame was a little bit easier just because kids seem to be, or my kids particularly, like were always more ready and excited to go back to school, which made it a lot more fun with school shopping, and things of that nature. But I know for some people that piece can be difficult when you are school shopping for multiple children. But for me personally, I think it was more so fun because they were excited. My personal experience of now that me having a freshman, an eighth grader, and a fourth grader, that it has been a lot. It's been more difficult now with them being older. And I don't know if that's because part of their, I guess they have their own identity now and they like have a lot more choice and they're a lot more self-conscious and aware, especially as you have like kids in the developmental stage of like that high school-ish stage with like classes and that piece. So that's been kind of stressful to navigate. And then like being an educator, the other piece to that is not only are you getting the kids ready to kind of help manage their anxiety with school, but then it's like now you have to navigate your classroom, making sure you're prepared for those deadlines that you have for the beginning of the school year. And typically they only give you 1 week without students to prepare. I've also heard like a funny thing like, oh, like a lot of educators prepare during the summertime. I am not one of those. I use the summertime to just relax, cool off, spend time with the kids. So yeah, that's my piece. So I feel like now has been a lot more stressful as the kids have gotten older versus when they were younger.
So what are some of their stressors or their issues? Because and I'm sure it varies with the grade and the personality of the child, in terms of the way. And then sometimes these stressors don't show up until maybe a month because, as you said, that adrenaline is going and I'm getting back to school with my friends, et cetera, et cetera. And then you find like this lull that could happen, a few weeks into the school year. So what are some of the stressors that the kids deal with from your vantage point as an educator as well as a mom?
So I think quite frankly, my eighth grader kind of dealt with it the most. Just a backstory on him. He's in like an accelerated program, you will call it. And so like when he started this school in seventh grade, it was almost like seventh and eighth grade material were in 1 year. And he's also in like a high school setting. So that alone is a big jump because from seventh and eighth grade, they're really mixed in with high schoolers and getting a high school curriculum. And so for him, he adjusted really well to the environment, but the social aspect has been very difficult for him to navigate. And I think with that, there's a lot of times where he does struggle with emotional regulation, which again, not necessarily a struggle, but I think that that is quite, I guess you could say, normal for kids when they're starting those teenage years, just trying to find themselves and find their group of people, acceptance, peer pressure, and things of that. And so for him, his was very, I guess you could say, jump started because he was kind of thrown into a environment where you had a higher level of students who were growing at a more rapid rate than him. So for him, that has been the piece to try to help him to navigate more. And then he is a very social individual. So with that, he wants to join everything, but with him joining everything and now him getting or starting high school classes in 8th grade, by this being week 4, is starting to take some toll. And so now we're starting to learn how to navigate those and kind of helping him to learn how to make better decisions in his time. So yeah, it's been a very interesting ride. So I think with him personally, I'm in the ride as we're talking about it. So I definitely appreciate this space to be able to process as I'm sharing, because it's definitely been a interesting experience, to say the least.
Yeah. And I know, Dominique, you have a couple of children in school as well as navigating your own education space. Do you want to share a little bit about what that's been like for you?
Sure. So I am a mom of 2. I have uh what is my thought? I think my son is a sophomore in high school, and then I have a second grader. So I have 2 only children, respectively, because they're on 2 totally different worlds, planets. So um, back to school. So my daughter, my second grader, she loves school. She's a type A kid. She loves rules in school. So I think uh, getting her prepared for school and to go back was kind of a no-brainer. What can kind of be stressful are the lists, the back to school list that we get. So, I'm that person, you have to get everything on the list, and, it's a fun time. When my son was smaller like that, it was same deal. It was smaller. You do have more control as a parent, but then as they grow, there's a separation. So now my high schooler, it kind of depends on the day. Sometimes he's motivated, other times he's not. Last year, his freshman year, he was really excited about joining football. That was his thing. So he was excited to be in school, the prep and all the things. This year, same, but not as much. Um, and I think the social aspect of it is different, a lot different from when I was starting high school with the technology and things like that. So as a parent, it's a little bit harder to kind of keep tabs and track on those sorts of things. Um, so, yeah. And I think coming off of the summer, just kind of hyping my kids up, getting them back into the mental space. I'm like, hey, back to school. So for me, it's getting things organized, making sure we have the snacks, making sure we have a schedule, so that I can try to run a tight ship nonetheless. Work for me as a site director of my program. The stressors there would be enrollment, because we have to have a certain number of families enrolled. So just making sure that, my families have everything that they need so that they can start their preschoolers, which is that's another thing, because parents are also stressed about sending the littlest kids to school. So that's, just helping them also to get into the mental space, kind of easing their minds and their worries and their cares. Um, we hold open houses, and I'm usually there to answer all the questions. Um, Also, PD. So a few weeks before school actually started, were responsible for going to professional development, and making sure all of those things are squared away. Making sure that my teachers are in the mental space to start, their classrooms are set up, um, helping them order things that they need. So helping the adults who's going to be in the classroom, um, you know, my teachers had a pretty rough group last year, so just kind of getting them excited again about this year. This year isn't so bad, so far. And then myself as a student, I've been in school all of my life. I'm working on my education specialist degree. And so even with that, just finding space, room, and capacity to just be a student um, can be a lot. So again, with me, I need things written down. I need schedules. I need calendars. And so those things really do help to try and organize my thoughts and things like that. Even to the kids, going back to them, they start school at different times. My daughter has a, a late start on Wednesday, so just trying to remember who has what, when they have things, practices. So that those are my stressors there. Um, but we got through it. I've been getting through it for at least 15 years. My son's 15, so But I do agree that the younger years are easier because you do have a little bit more of a hold and control. But then as they get older, that can navigating those things can become a little bit more tricky. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I find I'm in awe, like listening to both of you in terms of how you navigate it, and we make it sound like we do it with such ease, And one of the things that both of you all named that I remember being a parent that would stress me out, what was that back to school list? Was the expectation? I mean, I would spend at least $200 to $500 sometimes trying to get everything on that back to school list, and then feeling guilty if I wasn't able to. And so the financial toll that it takes, and it used to then be like that. Like when I was in school, your school had supplies, and that was the end of that. Parents were not required to go out and buy tissue and paper towels and wipes and this and that. And so for me, with my sons, that brought about a tremendous amount of stress and shame. If I so it was almost like I was forced to, because I didn't want to be that parent that didn't have all of the supplies, and so, or didn't have this or didn't have that. As they got older, though, I was like, F that. I'm not buying paper towels for the whole, like, F that. I ain't buying crayons. And what we got to buy crayons for the whole, like 5 boxes of crayons, stuff like that, So it had gotten out of control. But anyway, I digress. But you all make it just sound like, oh yeah, I'm a parent of two. I go to school. I do this. So it's just like, wow, like, do we even? And I guess why that's coming up for me is, do we even give ourselves the spaciousness to breathe and to sit with it, all of the things? Or do we just like, I don't have time for that, I just got to do the things, And so it's something for us to reflect on. So I want to hear from let me hear from you, Jerome. He like, I've been waiting though.
No. If I have permission to just kind of think out loud, my thoughts and remarks are going to go in a different direction. I will start with a story, actually. A few years ago, I spent like 5 weeks in Kenya, and I had befriended a taxi driver, and I would sneak out at night and enjoy the nightlife, if there is such a thing in Kenya. And he was my driver. And so towards the end of my stay, he said, I want to take you somewhere. I want you to meet what he referred to as his uncle. And So he takes me on a drive about 30 minutes outside of Nairobi, which is the capital of Kenya. And I had to bring whiskey for the uncle. Turns out the uncle used to be a teacher in Kenya. He was an older gentleman. And so he didn't speak English. And so he had these messages for me. And he would share the messages to the guy, Patrick, my taxi driver. And then Patrick and his cousin, they would talk in what they called a mother tongue. And then they would talk in Swahili, and then they would convert it to English. And I was trying to take notes as best I could, but it was dark. It was basically like candlelight, that kind of outside setting. And so I walked away with this list because the conversation was about, as a teacher, who are you to the community? What is your responsibility to the community, right? And so he was telling me and challenging me and schooling me in terms of what a teacher used to be compared to what teachers are now. And I want to share some of that. There was 8 things, but the 2 things that I remember, one was called Msaada, Msaada. Now, this is a Swahili word, and it basically means to help grow, to scaffold the growth of a person, right? And he talked about that for a long time. There was another word, and I wrote it down. I have a hard time pronouncing it, but it's like Embodied or something like that. I can spell it as Uponyajji. And when you translate that word means to help make whole, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about teaching, and I've been teaching a long time, so like over the arc of my career, I started off with what I would call surface level assignments, right? Paperwork, organization within a classroom. But over 30 plus years, like I look at teaching more of a calling and a responsibility to the community, right? And so I think about it in this way, right? And so some of the angst that you talk about is that like this is serious work, right? Like I'm just not doing a job. I have work to do on behalf of not just my students, but the community from which those students come and the community that those students will find themselves when they're done with this educational experience, right? Does that make sense? Somebody say something to me. It's hard talking to them.
Absolutely. It is. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so some of this anxiety or angst, as you call it, it's because this is real. Like this is real work. And I'm excited about that. Like I'm excited to be tasked with the responsibility of scaffolding or designing and facilitating an experience that is a scaffolding experience for young people to grow into whatever gifts they've been sent with, right? Because too often we get into this, well, I have to impart knowledge into kids. Well, at this stage of my career, I'm looking to pull out those gifts that the child came with.
That's right.
Right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I was in California a couple of weeks ago. I was invited out by an organization called Black Early Childhood Educators. I want to give a shout out to them, based out of Los Angeles. Black ECE, Black Early Childhood Educators. Wonderful organization. And we were having a symposium on Black language. And so we were kind of talking, and this came out. When I get a new group of students, some of my angst is that I'm looking for a sign that that child has been here before. And that's a Black thing, if you know what I'm talking about, right? I'm looking for signs that there's a piece of some ancestor somewhere that has returned within this child. It could be Nat Turner. It could be Martin Luther King. It could be X. It could be, Harriet Tubman. It could be Maya Angelou. It could be Medgar Evers. It could be Billie Holiday. It could be any of these heroes and gems that we've had on the planet that has transitioned. Like when I see students, I'm looking for evidence or signs that they've been here before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some
Mm-hmm.
of my anxiety, man, this is a lot of responsibility I have,
Yeah.
right? But I'm an OG. I've been doing it for over 3 decades and trying to study it in such a way that transcends what the Europeans had in store when they created this version of education for us,
Yes.
right? And so at some point, we got to have that conversation, right? How colonization first was about occupying the land,
Mm-hmm.
then it was occupying thought.
Mm-hmm.
Now they want to occupy beingness,
Yeah.
right? So I know I took the conversation in a different
Oh
direction,
no, that's
but
that's
that's where I'm at
right
with it.
in. Yep.
Um, and I can go on and on and on. But again, it's this responsibility. Like we're warriors, right? Like we stand in between, like almost as a vanguard between the BS that we know education is designed to be about. You know, we stand trying to buffer our children against that, but yet have such a light heart that we're soft enough to support their development, right? To help
Yeah.
make them whole so that they can serve the community. That's what my anxiety is about.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. I wanna turn it to Medea. I think that I tried to invite you in earlier, but something happened with the technology. So if you just briefly introduce yourself, and then you can talk about whatever stress, anxiety, angst, or even piggybacking off of. I'm calling on you next after Jerome because we be here with the ancestral wisdom and knowledge and the young folks who then came back and since he didn't open up that box, let's go on and step into it.
Can y'all hear me though?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, give thanks and thank you all for your patience. And Dominique and Brittany and Kim, I truly, Jerome, you did a great segue and bridge about this work we do as educators. So I'm gonna go back. I'm a 25-year K through 12 educator. Teaching was not my first choice because I'm a daughter of teachers, professors, community artisans, et cetera, et cetera. So I didn't really want to become a teacher. It happened to me in Chicago. That's where I got my start. And to this day, my oldest set of children from 2000 are pushing 40. And so I look at my role as an educator, as a student, being aware that I've been in all these places and I continue to be in those places of student as teacher or teacher as student because I come from that kind of parent. My mother taught almost 40 years or whatever in Philadelphia. And this whole thing about teaching being a very um, sacred calling, whether you teach little people or adults, because that's the whole thing of life. We are perpetually learning throughout every facet and stage of our being. We never stop learning, and we never like this whole thing between teacher and student is you get to be in a mirror, a constant mirror with yourself. Jerome, you brought up something very powerful because my capstone for my master's thesis in education from DePaul was around the miseducation of Americans. And first, I was looking at it around things of race and oppression and things of that nature. But as you stated, then I start looking at like why was this educational system designed? The accommodationist method that started in the 1900s after we as the enslaved people, whether we came here on a boat or our people were enslaved here from the land, we were able to sustain with being forbidden to learn how to read or write according to their standard, but we were still thriving. This is prior to the end of slavery and 40 and 50 years after slavery ended. We were thriving into the early 20th century, right? So when you talk about ancestors returning, here we are now in 2025. I'm in an ancestral home. I'm returning to my ancestral land today in the next county over. But who are these young people that have agreed to let you be their teacher so you can, as the elder told you, scaffold their growth along the journey. It's such a big deal. That's my 2 cents. And just thank you. This is such a rich and necessary conversation. And real quick, even about the PD part, because as teachers, we go to PDs and that ish don't be about. I mean, it's like, okay, y'all, for real, we heard the people through the little slot. But even as educators, how are we being fed to have that relationship with our families that we work with every day? I mean, to this day, I have parents where I just spent time with my student in Puerto Rico with her 2 daughters. I have parents all over the country, all over the world, because, like I told the one little boy last week, and now I teach predominantly white children, right? But I'm gonna treat you like you mine, regardless of what happens in your home or how it is in this. I'm going to treat you like you're mine. And his mind was blown. But after 48 hours, good morning, Miss Brooks. How you doing? Much love, son. How are you? That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, since we're talking about the students and who are these young folks, who are these beings that have come back during this time, very intentional time, to do the knowledge, to do the work, I want to bring to the stage Christian. So
Yeah, so I'll say my journey with education has been a very interesting one. Definitely moments of anxiety and stress. Thinking back to like some things some of the other panelists said. Thinking back to my younger days in education when I was like in kindergarten through like 5th grade, it definitely was like exciting and joyous to go to school. And the things that I was stressed out the most about were small things like what teacher am I going to have? What friends are going to be in my class? But I do think the older you get, the more conditioned you are, the more exposed you are to society. It does bring like quite a bit of stress, like through high school and definitely through college. I think some of my most stressful times in college, it wasn't the work itself, but it was the world around me that made it very stressful. And in college, I almost had like all A's, like all throughout college. So it wasn't like the work itself, but for me personally, it was like I said, the world around me, the things that were going on in my personal life. Um, and we live in a very a very dangerous society, a very dangerous world. Now, even today, I can only imagine like what kids are going through now with like the limit to education through like, this new administration and how they're trying to limit knowledge. And it's all like a bigger scheme that's bigger than ourselves, which make it difficult as well. And so now that I'm entering my master's degree, I've been in corporate America for 2 years. So there's definitely like a lot of fear and anxiety around that. Like, am I smart enough going back to school? Did I lose like the routine of, because school and corporate are like two different worlds. And so now I'm just like trying to get myself back into school mode. But the beautiful thing about education is like being able to learn and being able to truly like dive into the books, dive into the professors, the cohort, the students around you. I really like find value in being the youngest person in the room, the most naive person in the room, the one that knows the least in the room, because you have the most to gain. So that's kind of where I'm at now, in a space of just being open enough to learn and grow my tools in this new version. So yeah, that's my little spill.
thank you. Thank you. And so who haven't I heard from? Let me hear from Kira a little bit, as you are also a student, a mom, an educator. And so what are some of the anxiety, the angst, like what have your experiences been with this back to school journey?
Well, my back to school journey is a little bit non-conventional. Mainly because I'm a little bit different. My son, he's homeschooled and he attends at my school right now with Neuro Catalyst Academy. So it's a little bit unconventional with everybody. So we don't have like the long back to school list coming from the district or him meeting his teacher and things like that. It's a little bit different. With my daughter, she's going into preschool, so that's ahead in itself to getting her prepared for that. But with me starting my own school, it's a huge stressor. This is my first year being a founder and starting and launching a school. So going back into that is definitely different. It's more so I'm looking at as an admin, a parent, and also a teacher aspect. So I'm putting on all the hats all in one, and building that school. So I am finding my own curriculum for my son and finding skills and things that works for him. I'm finding students, building students, having students come in and building curriculum and getting to know them as well. So the whole back to school stressor, it's a lot different coming from my standpoint than, what I was about 2 years ago. Because 2 years ago, I was kind of in the same position where I was getting a list and, going over my students, trying to build my classroom, making sure we had everything, and also working with my staff, making sure my staff was all prepared. So now I'm in a different realm where I'm literally playing all three roles at the same time and preparing to go back to school, and also having my own school in itself. I'm working on my doctoral degree right now. So maintaining my personal schooling while trying to run a school, and also being a parent and getting my son acclimated back into school, and then also having my daughter prepared to go into her first year of preschool. It is a lot, and it's a lot of stressors. And I guess like the most thing that I worry about is making sure that they have an environment where they're thriving in. I want to make sure that I'm making the right decisions for my kids and making sure that they're in the right positions. We've had issues in the school settings here. I know my story might be a little bit different, but my son personally here, we had to go to, in 2 years, he had been to 6 different schools, and trying to find a fit for him just kind of led us down into the homeschooling route, and which founded us and brought our school into play. But yeah, my kind of back to school stresses are a little bit non-conventional and a little bit different than your traditional school or traditional family may have experienced.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. Thank you. And I don't think that I heard from Keisha, and I want to hear from you. And then I want to shift the conversation before we wrap it up. I want to shift it to tools and techniques, some things that you all are integrating in your lives to balance that. Because again, I'm taking it from the lens of a holistic healing practitioner, as someone who is an advocate for harmony and balance, and when you are carrying all of that, playing all of those multiple roles, like what, being able to engage in not just self-care and mental care, physical care, emotional care, balance, harmony. And so I kind of want to talk about all of that, but let me hear from you, Keisha.
Yeah, so Jerome, thank you so much for highlighting some really key points when you were talking about being an educator and pulling out the natural talents, of your students, being able to recognize it, being able to celebrate it, being able to create space within your own classroom or, your school to be able to do so. And actually my work with elementary students, I worked in technically what is considered, impoverished neighborhoods, where as a parent, you would get that back to school list, and you didn't know how you were going to cover that. Mm-hmm. They may not have transportation money, or it was a struggle, and to be able to have, a teacher where you could say, Miss White, I don't have that, what am I going to do? And that actually led me to my connection to step away from elementary education and to begin to go over to the collegiate side and work with the parents. Because what I saw was a parent who is rooted, a parent who feels successful about certain aspects of their life can bring that in to their children, which spreads into the community.
That's right.
And I had the pleasure of working with adult students at the collegiate level, going into trade schools for electrical, which was game changing because it wasn't the traditional format. It wasn't 4 years. It wasn't grad school. It was, I have this talent and I need to work with my hands, but I need for it to pay off. What is going to be different for me this time, Miss White? Because I need to be able to cover that school list. I need to be able to cover those school fees. I need to be able to teach someone to fish. And I would sit with adults and I would get straight to the fear of it, because this time is going to be different and you have support.
Mm-hmm.
You have that face, you have that recommendation of, you can come to me and let's talk about what's really keeping you out of the classroom, what's really not aiding in your success, and what can we change. And it was game changing. It was not only game changing for me, but it was game changing for the parents who didn't have that experience, because everybody can't always do the traditional 4-year route, but there's something else for you. So being able to sit with them and close that door and talk about their attempts at school before, why didn't it work, or the timing with school, and really planning out, is this the best time for me so that I can be successful? It gets down to weather, it gets down to transportation costs, it gets down to support. Who is going to pick up my children? Who's going to be with them? Is nights going to be better for me? Are days going to be better for me? And seeing the joy of them reinvesting in themselves, seeing the joy of, it is this or bust, seeing someone who was never good at school excel and be on a scholar list, and having your hands to know that I can go into the community and I can create, I can pull in light where there was darkness.
Mm-hmm.
It changes everything. And then you're able to give that to your child. You're able to give that to your partner. You're able to feel successful about school and promote success and promote the idea of education and training within your community.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back to education being a calling. And thank you for bringing in the non-traditional route, the non-traditional student, the adult student who has decided to go back, no matter if it's the traditional route, vocation, trade, that has decided, as you said, to invest in themselves, and the sense of accomplishment that comes with making that investment and learning, and so thank you for sharing that. And so
Kim, can I
go
jump
ahead.
in with some
Absolutely.
thoughts?
Absolutely.
First question, are we looking at going for an hour?
Yes.
All right, so that gives us about 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm. We could go a little longer. Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things that I think is important, and there are several key points, and I don't want to dominate the conversation at this point, but I think we as educators, we would be healthier if we took agency in understanding who we are in this work of education. A lot of words to say simply this. What I found is that teachers, in particular Black teachers, they have not engaged in deep study about the history of education for Black people. And so we are just delivering service. We're just service deliveries for a system that we don't really understand. And because we've had some degree of success, right, we think that this is the way that all Black folk should experience success. Let me just throw this out there for the group to ponder and maybe and jump in. What was the time span between so-called Emancipation Proclamation, right? So-called freeing of the enslaved. What was the time span between that and the opening of HBCUs?
Mm-hmm.
Now think about it. We weren't even allowed to read.
Mm-hmm.
Education wasn't meant for us. Then there was Emancipation Proclamation. How long did it take before we opened HBCUs?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody got an answer?
No.
About 5 years. And so think about it. Yep, somebody said 15, maybe 10. About 5 years. So my
Wow.
point is, there was already some form of education taking place in our community. So as soon as the Emancipation Proclamation hit, we was ready to roll.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are part of a system, but there was a form of education taking place that was outside of the system. And if we understood that, it might help us grapple with the stress, anxiety, trauma that we experience being part of a system.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have the quote with me by heart, but it's from Frantz Fanon. And it says something like this: every generation out of relative obscurity must figure out their mission and either fulfill it or betray it. Right? It's a Frantz Fanon quote. I'll find it. I'm sure it's around somewhere. But it's this idea, okay, we went to school, we got the degrees, we got the certifications, we got the job. That was just jumping through the hoops to get the job.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got work to do, especially as Black folk. And
Yeah.
some of our mental and emotional and spiritual health might be fostered if we understood where we are in this game. Right? At least that's my thought. I just wanted to put that out there before time ended.
Yeah, and that also goes to, there's a deep connection. I think the thread that keeps coming up and coming through and interweaving itself through here is really understanding what our purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
What that ancestral calling is.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we in these spaces, and going a little bit deeper than because that in and of itself, when you have that reason, when you have that meaning, when you have that purpose, when you have that knowing of what the mission is, because it is a mission,
Mm-hmm.
then you can go about getting the mission done. However, that it still needs to be done in a way that does not sacrifice your health and your wellness and your well-being. And that is the one thing that we as Black folk have to learn. I had to learn it as a mother, as someone who was in corporate, as like all of these things can burn you out. And so being able, and I want to shift the conversation because I do want to hear from all of you all in terms of tools and techniques, because I want this to be our takeaway. And so one of the things, primal, is knowing your purpose, knowing your history, understanding the system. The system was designed to do exactly what it is doing. And that is miseducating your children most often, indoctrinating them into a work, labor, productive culture, taking away
And
the
us too.
creativity.
And us too. Like, not just kids, education is designed to rearrange us as educators into this production cog. Right? And we have to realize that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so as we are on these journeys with our students, with our children, with ourselves, it's really understanding what that journey is all about, and then how do we navigate it in a way that is harmonious and balanced, where we're not constantly fighting, where we're not even constantly fighting to be seen and to be heard in systems that will never see or hear you. And so I'm going to shut up and throw it back to you all to just share some of the, like I said, I talked about creating a space, a classroom environment that invites all people in. by going back to things like ritual, about learning about who you are, about breathing, about moving, about, and at the same time being able to connect to that purpose, to that truth, that bigger calling that will help activate and energize you. So it's not just, okay, yeah, I do the paperwork, I do the admin stuff, I do this, I do that, and I'm tired, I'm fatigued, I'm burnt out, and I don't even have time to create or think or experience anything else. And so y'all talk to me.
I think that's like the point of what I'm trying to do with my school is I recognize that there's a problem. There's an issue in our education system. Our children are not being served, especially our neurodivergent children. My son's on the spectrum, and like I said, within 2 years, he's been moved to 6 schools, and every single school, it was the same story. We'll bring him there. He starts out great. Then we'll hear, oh, well, it's not a good fit. Why don't you try A, B, and C? And we tried everything. And I think that that's what I realized that's what we need to do in our purpose. And I think that our community needs more. And I bring up the point that we talk about the Black women are the most educated group in America and in this society. And we need more spaces and build more spaces for our kids. And I have noticed that there's an increase of that's what, I'm seeing a lot of more places and more people building micro schools and building parents who are starting to homeschool their children. And that's what I basically are going into doing is I'm trying to create a space for our kids to feel more welcome, more included. And that's also feel like it's bringing me purpose too, is thinking about like going back into my childhood and the struggles that I had in the education field and, remembering, how I felt as a child and how I felt unseen and also labeled and misrepresented in the classroom and bringing those type of trauma and turning that into a place where other kids who are going through the same thing don't have to experience the same trauma. They don't have to experience the same label, where they can be themselves, they can thrive, they can grow, they can feel accepted, they can feel wanted, they can look at the classroom and look at their work and they can see representations of themselves and not sit back and learn in Western history, but we don't learn anything about what was going on with our people. We don't learn anything about what they were doing during this time. We don't see people like ourselves excelling and doing other things outside of being entertainers or athletes. We don't get a chance to see that. So having that representation is, excelling, and it's something that, I feel like we as educators, and I feel like everybody on this panel is educated, that we're bringing into our community and we need to do more of, and also creating more spaces for our kids to thrive in. And, it starts out with the next generation that, we have to build them up and teach them so they can go out into society and build those and build more onto those platforms. So,
and so what do you do to take care of you? Because if you're not taken care of, you can't do this incredible work that you have in front of you and that you've already done. So what are some tools and resources that you integrate into your own life to help you balance and harmonize it all?
Well, me personally, I think that's what I've been going on a journey this past year is finding self-care. Like me, I am very in tune with the gym, and I literally plan everything around the gym, where I literally set those 2 hours aside for myself. But those 2 hours aside, I have to do, and my day is planned around that. So that's one of the pleasures that I have for myself is I have been trying to set just, even if it's an hour, 2 hours aside for myself, just so I have that pleasure. And it's been helping me as far as mental health. Physical, I feel a lot better. I don't feel as groggy. I don't feel tired all the time, and it gives me more energy. So I plan those times aside for myself. Is that these are non-negotiable times. I have to go during this time period. Whatever's going on, we have to plan around that. So I think that that's something that, being a mom and working and everything, that I think that a lot of us lose, is that we don't find time for ourselves. And we don't plan time for ourselves, and we plan so much around other people. And I caught myself doing that for years, where I planned everything around everybody else's schedule, that I found that I didn't have any time for me, and it left me angry. It left me resentful, left me feeling just just out of balance. And so I made that switch to myself where I have these 2 hours for myself, and regardless of what's going on, those are non-negotiable times. And I think that that's something that's educators, moms, just people in general, that we have to do for ourselves, and not feel guilty when we do it. Because I went through that where I just felt guilty. But I have to, just realize that if for me to serve other people, I have to be able to serve myself first. And if I'm not in a position where I don't feel healthy, I don't feel happy, I'm tired all the time, then I'm no use and I'm no service to other people. So when
Yes.
I go to the gym, that's non-negotiable. I'm going to be there. I'm going to go 5 days a week, and we're going to plan around that. So that's just something that I have implemented for myself that has helped me overall.
Yes. And that's your ritual. That's your ritual. And that's where I'm getting at, is that we need support. Anybody else want to share? Jerome.
I'll be quick. I actually have a list. There's 5 things that we should engage in. 1 is to read. 2 is journaling, and 3, study groups. 4, get involved with the 4 and 5 you can actually do in your practice, right? Integrate the arts. And then 5 is movement, right? So those are the 5 things. Read, journal, join study groups, embrace the art, and movement. Now, those are actionables, but there are 2 philosophies that come out of Africa that I think should be incorporated in our beingness as educators. One is, of course, Ubuntu, right? And so that's the connection, interconnection, interdependence, interrelatedness. If that philosophy drives your work, you'll end up in a better place than if you think education is just about career advancement, whether it's yours or your students. So Ubuntu is one. The other one is Salbona. Salbona. Is anybody on the panel familiar with Salbona?
Yes.
And so Salbona translated means I see you, but it's not the literal Western I see you with my eyes. It's more about embracing the full humanity of people involved in education, including yourself. And so maybe we should have a part 2 where we can get deeper into these practices and philosophies, because I think that's the meat that people could and should walk away with. And so those 2 philosophies, Salbona and Ubuntu, if those philosophies drive your work, you'll be grounded in such a way that maybe it'll mitigate some of the stress and disappointment.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And Ubuntu is I am because we are.
Well, that is a phrase that most people associate with Ubuntu, and that comes out of work of John Mabidi. And so it captures it. But the way I describe Ubuntu is it's when you understand the interconnectedness, the interrelatedness, and the interdependence of all things. So interdependence, interrelatedness, and interconnection.
Yep.
Not just humans, but really all things, to be honest with you.
Yep. Awesome. Any
All
other?
right, I'm a mute, for real. I'm muting.
Can you all hear me?
Stuff. Good stuff. Any other
Can you hear me?
practical embodied? I can hear you, Medea. Go ahead, babe.
Okay. So when you first asked this question, what came up for me was breath work. As soon as you awake, breath work. It doesn't have to be super deep. You take your breath and you give thanks. First thing in the morning. For me, I integrate, my grandma's favorite psalm, the 118 psalm, and then I give thanks for my beingness, and that I have these ancestors and the Most High propelling me in this work each and every moment, even when I don't want to get out of bed and do what I have to do. The second tool and technique is the process of allowing things. to unfold and not be in judgment about how that happens, which is not easy. It's a daily, ongoing, moment by moment practice because we want things to be a certain way. When you've done your breath work, when you've done your prayer work, intention work, little 2, 3 things. Allowing will come once you surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Once you surrender that your heart is aligned with your purpose, which is going to drive your vessel to do what you need to do. Another thing that came up around this technique is like this knowledge of self thing, the tools and techniques. Knowledge of self, knowing who you are, purpose, history, knowing the playing field, system, environment, landscape is something that as you move in your work as teacher, as student, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Okay, one step at a time, one moment at a time. And it requires you to be in your face
Mm-hmm.
and to get out of your head and
Yeah.
to cry and to be like, oh shit, he's running down my leg, right? Oh, my bank account, or I just got rich. Allow it. Allow your humanness, ego, and then just give thanks. These are tools. This whole thing about, and thank you, Kira, because when I hear neurodivergent, Jerome brought up ancestral. I'm like, people's superpower. Even as the teacher, we are in a pivotal time right now where we we remember ourselves. Remember, even us as the teacher, we are re-remembering, reactivating things in our work because we said yes to this work. So you
Mm-hmm.
lay back in your face, you stay in your heart. And during the day, you won't have to do more daggone breath work. And you ought to journal or do a video recording so you can get it out.
Yes.
And then when you get home at the end of the night, you bathe, you give thanks, and you start again the whole next day. And everybody does it different.
Yeah.
Gratitude.
And I want to add to Jerome's list and your list, Medea and Kira, and adding divination. And the reason that divination is so powerful is because that is what keeps you connected to your path and to your purpose, because we get so much external information and noise and disappointment. And going to Bendia's point about surrendering, it's easier to surrender when you can tap into that wisdom and that knowledge about, okay, is this an alignment for me? Okay, what's really happening behind the scenes? Okay, am I going in the right direction? Okay, is this person intentional for me? Like all of the questions, like nothing becomes obscure when you can do the things that Jerome said, when you can move the body, like Kira said, and also when you have this tool of spirit communication. And so tools of divination, you can divine in meditation, you can divine through oracle cards or wisdom cards. You can meet with a practitioner to help you divine through your Akashic record. There's so many tools that you can literally tap into a higher consciousness that's you. You can tap in to your ancestors. You can tap in, and so having these checkpoints where you're tapping in, at least once a week or every other day or every morning doing a quick reading, and so again integrating those tools. Any last minute? We almost at an hour because we did start late, but
Yes, I just wanted to say I agree with all of you. Those are excellent points, beautiful points. And I actually incorporate all of them. I'm working on the movement. Jerome and Kira, I'm working on that part. But the part that guides me every morning is when I get up and I give thanks. But I also remember that every day I have the opportunity to transform lives. And that is the biggest thing for me. The honoring of a student, the honoring of their journey and my journey with them, because every life that I touch touches someone else, and we all are interconnected. It does create community. It does create honor, and knowing that I can go out anywhere in this world and know the role that I have played in helping someone to transform their lives. And at the end of the day, that's the thing that brings me back tomorrow. That's the thing that makes me get creative and say, how can I reach someone else? Is there another way that I can present this to them?
Beautiful. Beautiful. And so let's wrap it up. I just want to give everyone like a minute to talk about if you have any projects in the work to share with the audience, any of your upcoming work. And so I'll just Jerome, do you have anything you're working on that you want to share?
I do. So this is the beginning of the year, and I have this ritual, if you will, of beginning of the year. I'll call it the season for Sawbona. And it is, I try to begin the school year in a way that allows me to create a culture of belonging for students to bring all of who they are into the classroom. It's a lot of work because you don't know what you're getting in terms of students as people, students as students. I teach first grade, and so best case scenario is they've had 1 year of formal schooling and maybe some pre-K type of experience. So that's something that I always get excited about. And now I'm transitioning. This is maybe my last year teaching, and so I'm transitioning into some work as a community educator. I have an organization I started called Remember Home. And so my goal is to do that, what is sometimes called supplemental schooling, after school programming, where I can really just help young folks embrace all of the philosophies that Africa has to offer that helps us be human. So stay tuned.
Awesome. So excited about that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dominique.
There we go. Waiting for the mic to pop back up. I am currently not working on anything in particular. I am nearing the end of the first part of my EDS specialist program in school psychology. So, prayerfully, I will be starting my practicum and internship this fall in a few weeks, next month. So I'm working on that. I'm working on just trying to keep my life together as a whole. But I do hope to be a part of a few things in the future. One thing I kind of wanted to share when we were talking about the tools, tips, and tricks to managing the anxiety around school was ritual. I liked what Kira said about making it a non-negotiable to work out. And I just recently, or I got Spirit recently told me, I need to move. So I'm starting back walking. So, and she was right. It gives you so much more energy. And I knew these things. I just had to get back up and do it and remember. So, just creating ritual around those things and making yourself a priority and remembering to do those things. So, and then even into like me, the car, tangible things, because sometimes there's just not enough time. Sometimes for me, being mindful of what you're listening to. So if it's you know music, spiritual music, gospel, whatever it is, I'm mindful of how I start my day because that really does have an impact on how I show up at work, and being around the students, my teachers, staff, things like that. So I do that. That's helpful. And even into the classrooms, I had mentioned to my teachers last summer, and I'm happy they took heed. I told them that I have two classrooms I'm over. So one of them, it was very overstimulating color wise. It was a lot of reds and blues and bright colors, and as a result, they had some behavior issues last year. And I'm like, hey, have you ever thought about doing muted neutrals, muted tones? I'm like, even to me, I didn't even like going in that one particular room because it was just too much for me. And they were like, one of my classrooms, they still did what they did, but the other classroom, so it's like browns and greens, and that class is chef's kiss. Like that really did make a difference. So just creating the environment. A newsletter in my daughter's school showed a picture of like a lot of schools have like these cozy corners or things like that, the couch and pillows and books and things like that. So on the wall it said our class family. They had picture frames, like picture frames you see at home. So it just made the environment cozy and family like, to promote the whole community and comfort. Our kids, we have them bring family pictures from home and we create the space. So I think setting the stage and setting the tone in the classroom for the kids to have that experience to ease their anxiety is also important. So just wanted to share that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Keisha.
So one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is continuing to make time and choosing to study, because part of once you finish your master's or you finish your doctoral work, some people feel like, I don't want to read anything else, but the work that I do encouraging people to transform their lives through education, through training, I am a reflection of that. So it is a choice to sit and study. It is a choice to show up for my divination classes and be consistent, because how can I talk about the things if I am not those things, if I don't honor the time that it takes to prepare, the time that it takes to study, the mental space, the physical space, the spiritual space of honoring the journey of a student, and also staying humble to hear the instructor.
Come on. Thank you. Beautiful. Kira.
Oh yeah, I have a few things going on. We just had our first week in Neurocatalyst Academy. We just had a successful week, getting some students enrolled. A couple of events I have coming up. We are doing a webinar this Wednesday actually, and over the webinar we're going to be talking about strategies for working with your kids with ADHD and helping them, less frustration and fighting when it comes down to working with school, whether at home or in the actual traditional classroom. So I have a webinar coming up with different strategies for that. And then other things that I have going on, we're just trying to build the schools. We have some events coming up with the school. And then I'm also in the process of launching a fitness program for moms who are trying to, postpartum moms, and then just women who are trying to get back into shape and just trying to, go through the process of getting into the gym. So I'm in the process of launching that and everything. So I have a few things going on. I'm a busy person right now.
And Medea.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
This whole setup is interesting, but thank you all. Currently, I'm just continuing to be present to this house, 111 West Street. I work for the Historical Society, so with them, I'm doing oral histories. However, I recently connected with other family members here in Orange, and last night I was approached about, like, well, what are you doing? Do our oral histories. So I'm considering that. I'm also doing my work at the Spiritualist and Intuitive to activating and liberate with sound therapy, Reiki, divination work, and I'm just present. I'm just present and grateful. Thank you.
And so I am launching a public course. Enrollment is now open, and it is Black Women's Identity, Spirits, and Spiritualities. It is a 12-week course starting September 27th and going to December 12th, where we will focus on reclaiming a lot of our indigenous spiritualities, technologies, wisdom, and really going beyond the narrative of our historical start being in enslavement, and so tracing back our lineages and what does that look like. And so this class is not just centering Black women, but it is not just for Black women, because as Black women are the originators in the source, you get to learn about your indigenous roots by taking this class as well. So it is for all who want to learn more about her stories of Black women. And so with that said, I would like everyone to drop their links after this. And so when I publish the podcast, all of our listeners will have the opportunity to click on your links of your projects. So I thank you all for joining me, and you all have a wonderful Sunday. Blessings.
Bye.
Sitting time, we wonder why we cruise every time. It's all